On this week's episode, we're going to talk about how I failed my reading goals for 2019, what I did differently to go about it for 2020, and what are certain tricks and methodologies that I've learned throughout the last year. So I don't know about you guys, but I've heard that if you want to succeed in life, you have to read more. And if you think about all the successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, and all these amazing people, they always say that they read like almost a book a week. And I was kind of wondering, like, how is it that they do this? So 2019 came around and I'm like, all right, bet, let me try to read one book every 2 weeks. So my goal was to read 26 books. And the way I structured everything, I thought I was actually gonna go ahead and make this happen. And this is the journey that what I figured out and what I saw that actually didn't work out. So if you guys are subscribers to this channel, you know that I have actually a book reviewing series. And if you're not, I'm gonna invite you actually right now to like and subscribe to the channel and go check out all these book reviews that I have on. So the reason why I actually started doing book reviews, first and foremost, is because I'm actually a professional speaker, and I've noticed every time that I am on stage, afterwards people ask me, Chris, what books do you read? What do you suggest I read? So I wanted to create this list of books that I've read and kind of information about it. So that's why I started. So that's one reason. The second reason why I started that is, honestly, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to get more information with all these different avenues towards psychology, towards just reading for leisure, towards motivation, self-development, all these great things. And the third reason why I started this book review on this YouTube series is that it was going to keep me accountable to read these books. So this is the actual thing. I want to read more, and it was keeping me accountable to posting it. So I'm like, all right, how am I going to do this so I could read essentially my 26 books in the year? I'm somebody that's extremely structured. So I created a sheet over here with 26 lines, and I wrote down every single book, the book that I was going to read, when I started it, when I finished it, and when I posted a YouTube video on it. And then the last line over here was the review that I gave out of it on 10. And as I went down this, I realized that, okay, at the end of the year, I'm not gonna hit my 26. I actually got 18, which if we frame it and take a step back, for me, it's a huge victory because I had never actually read any amount of books significant to 18 in 1 year. So just that in itself was amazing, but I actually still failed my goal of 26. So after looking at this great sheet, I noticed that there were certain books that I flew through. Certain books took me a couple of months, and I noticed my motivation was not as high in the beginning, and then in the middle kind of went down, and at a certain point it went back up, seeing that the year was almost coming to an end and I wasn't close to finishing. So I noticed a train of where my motivation was going towards it. Another thing that I noticed was I was actually picking these books up and I was reading it cover to cover. So whatever book I had, from the beginning to the end, I committed to reading it, I'm gonna finish reading it. But what was happening with that was certain books were a lot more cerebral, and it was taking so much more effort for me to read. So sometimes you just don't feel like having that cerebral read, right? And because I had to go through it, because in my mind I'm like, I'm gonna read it cover to cover, I was just going with it. But it actually slowed me down. Some books took a couple of months, which I should have read it a lot faster. So that's one point that I realized as well. Another thing that I realized is, unfortunately, I didn't do a thorough enough of research before picking up every single book. Because to be quite honest, reading a book is a real commitment. Like, it takes time out of your day to sit down and read it. So God forbid you pick up a book that is horrible and you start reading it. It's like, why am I doing this? Why am I spending my time and not getting the value out of it? So I realized that I wasn't putting a research enough to see that, is this book highly rated? And is this something that gives me great value for what I'm looking for within my journey with picking up this book? And another part in this subcategory, I don't know about you guys, but we all have those people that around our circles that maybe read a book and they pick up the book, and after they read it, they're like, oh my God, this is the best book in the world. And they go start telling everybody, oh, read this book, read that book. And when that was happening, I was actually listening to certain of these people, but I was noticing that maybe these people haven't read enough books to really know the value of that book that they read. Is it really an amazing book? So be aware of the people that's giving you certain book recommendations, to be quite honest. The way I look at it right now is I get my book recommendations obviously through several sources, but if somebody comes up to me and tells me, Chris, you should really read this book, I'm like, beautiful, I let them talk about it. And then I ask them, how many books have you read so far? Because if they've only read a couple of books, they obviously don't have enough books to really compare to know that this is really an amazing book in whatever sense was. So that's one mistake that I did as well. And finally, the last mistake, which I think it was actually the biggest mistake, was my mindset with the books in itself. I was picking up books and I was reading them, and my mindset was, I'm reading a book. But the reality of the matter is, it's not I'm reading a book, it's I am a reader. So if you do that shift of that mindset between I'm reading a book towards I am a reader, your whole environment will change. And what I mean by that is that it will be completely normal for you to always have a book at arm's reach. It will completely be normal to you to always read at least a few minutes per day, because your mindset is, I'm not reading a book to read it and when it's done, I'm done with it. The mindset is, I am a reader. So I'm always having certain books around me and I'm always reading, and it's a part of my normal content consumption. So the mindset played a huge role once it shifted. So what do I do different for 2020 to really go get the goal that I want with my reading, as well as surpass it? So the first thing I realized, like I previously mentioned, the fact that I was reading one book cover to cover was not at all helping me. I actually have to read several books at the same time. And I noticed this through researching other people that read a lot. Now, there are certain advantages about reading several books at the same time. You are reading with the mood you have. So like I said, if we have let's talk about this book right here. You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza, which is a phenomenal book, and I've obviously done a book review on this as well, which I'll link up right now if you guys want to go check out. This book is amazing, but it's extremely cerebral. This book took me just over 2 months to read because I was reading 5 pages at a time. I was stopping, thinking about what I read and consuming it because I wanted to be able to really get the information to after do a proper book review and be able to teach it. But this is cerebral. Like I said, sometimes I didn't feel like sitting down and reading a book that's extremely difficult on that end. And when I mean difficult, I mean just a bit more challenging. Sometimes I want to read a book that's a bit more entertaining or a bit more easier, whatever the case is. So if you're reading several books at the same time, you have certain categories. And within that category, you're going to pick up the book with what you feel like in that mood. So if you feel like reading something a bit more easier and you just want to go into this fantasy world, maybe you could pick up a Harry Potter. If you want to learn something more cerebral, then you could go ahead and get those books. So that's the first shift that I did in itself. Now the second thing that I switched up, which is actually quite correlated with the first one, like I said, is I picked up several books at the same time. Now, what I've been doing since the beginning of the year 2020 is I'm reading a minimum of 3 books at the same time. But there are 3 specific categories of book. So the first one I'm reading is a book that is within my expertise. It's something that I have a very thorough understanding of, or quite thorough, that when I'm reading this book, it's giving me new knowledge, but it's not giving me something that's going to be completely different that I'm going to have a hard time understanding it. So for me, that could be anything with the self-development field, with the motivation field. It could be even in the brain chemistry side that I'm getting a quite good grasp of. So these are things that I would always want to continue learn more about, but it's something that I have already pretty good understanding of. The second one is something that I want to learn more of, but I don't have a good background of knowledge behind it. So it could be on human psychology, it could be on whatever I'm trying to develop, and that one is more my cerebral book. So if I want to sit down and be like, all right, I'm reading a book almost kind of like a homework, like cerebral, and I'm maybe not using the proper word and I'm saying homework because it doesn't necessarily have to be boring, far from it, but something that demands a bit more energy, then I'm reading that one. And the third one I have is something that is more pleasant. And what I mean pleasant is more like something, like we said, the Harry Potter, that could bring you to a fantasy world. So these are the categories that I'm looking at. Now within those categories, I have certain ways to consume each book. So the 2 first categories, usually I buy the physical book in itself. So I have the physical book in front of me, which I'm highlighting, taking down notes, and I'm listening to the audiobook at the same time just because you guys probably know I'm dyslexic, so it's the best way to go about it for me. But I have other books that I'm just listening to the audio. So the audio is when I'm cooking, when I'm commuting, when I'm doing this, when I'm doing that, I have it within my ear. So I'm consuming so much more content when it comes to books with the time that I have. I'm just being more efficient with it. And finally, the step that I've took differently as well, that I've added upon that I've already was doing, was having a solid accountability partner to really get me to read my books. So like I mentioned, I already had this accountability with myself, which I was keeping it, and honestly, it did help me to get to 18 books because just that in itself was quite amazing, but I didn't get that next step. So this is one, with yourself. Second thing is find a community of people that read around you. So that could be in like book clubs, that could be through YouTube channels, that could be through whatever sensitive way, that could be your parents, that could be your family. You just buy a book and be like, oh, let's read this at the same time, keeping that accountability. Another thing that I recently found is actually applications, some apps that could help you out with that. And the one that I'm currently using is called Goodreads, which is actually done by Amazon as well. So within that, putting in the books and processing it, oh, this is where I'm at during that book, it kind of brings another layer of fun and kind of makes it a game to see like, oh, I'm at 50% past this book, I'm almost done with that one, and whatever the case is. So if you guys don't know that application, I'm actually going to invite you to download it because it's actually helped me out a lot. And if you want, you could find me on the friends section at Christopher Dedeyan, so you could follow, see what I'm reading and see what I want to read as well. So once again, you find this community around you. So that's very important to really keep that accountability partners around you. And for me as well, keeping you guys accountable with me, with my YouTube channel, and all the book reviews that I'm posting helps me out a lot as well. So after learning all that and structuring my things differently, where am I at with my goal for reading 2020, right? So I'm actually finishing off right now my 11th, my 12th, and my 13th book of the year. And we're currently, as recording this video, the beginning March 2020. So I'm beyond ahead of schedule to hit my goal, which once again is to get 26 books in that year. And I'm at a current rate to read just about a book a week, if not a bit more. And that is if we keep the momentum and everything goes swimmingly throughout the year, right? So this is amazing in itself because I'm thoroughly seeing all this great changes that I've done is actually bringing great results for me and within my consumption with these books. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video over here with how to place new goals to really go get those numbers of the books that you want to read within your year. And as well, I'm going to invite you guys to write in the comment down below which trick you like the best, which methodology you think is going to work out the best for you. And if I miss certain tricks that you guys use, do not hesitate at all to mention down below. It's going to help us out as well. And furthermore, I'm going to invite you to like and subscribe if you definitely see there's some value within this channel. And you could even go check out all the book reviews that I have out. So I'm going to leave you off with this. Leaders are readers.